This freeway that connects the northern to the southern part of the city remains closed. The only vehicles we're seeing go by here are first responders, local sheriffs, federal forces that are basically using this as a main artery to make it from the northern part to the southern part of the city, which is being hit by very heavy flooding right now, as you mentioned, with those levees that have breached. Local, state, federal officials literally going from house to house, building to building, telling folks, those folks who have chosen to stay out there up until the last minute, that at this point they do not have a choice. They no longer have the option to stay behind and try to defend or protect their property or sort of save whatever can be saved. They have to leave because at this point there is a clear danger to their lives. So again, this is a very fluid situation. You have some parts of the city that are more or less spared at this point. That's the case in this particular part of Houston, right near a neighborhood called Monroe's, where I just witnessed literally throngs of people headed out because the rains have somewhat subsided, headed for the grocery stores that have opened temporarily just to stock up on goods, because meteorologists are telling folks out here that Harvey has absolutely not disappeared. The waters have somewhat receded, but it's going to be back with a vengeance, quote unquote, meaning that the rains will pick up again, and that's going to bring a lot of water. And just around me right now, I can see the water levels rising in some of the streets. What's really impressive is that these waters just go up very, very quickly. You go through a street that's pretty much empty of water, and you come back an hour and a half later, and you already have several inches. So people still very much cautious. And as you can tell around me, very few civilian vehicles out and about, very few folks choosing to make it out. There's people still very much holed up and waiting it out.
Yeah, and levees and reservoirs around the city, of course, the big concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is taking part in the southern part of the city, closest to the water. This, of course, basically is right along the path that Harvey has taken and where it has dropped the most water. Remember the circular motion of this hurricane basically going around and really hitting those parts of the city very, very hard. You have levees out there that have been breached simply because they could not withstand the amount of water that has been pouring torrentially into those levees. Similar scenes being played out in some of the city's bigger reservoirs that were leaking up until a few hours ago, but at this point have sort of exploded, walls cracked and water's pouring out and water levels going very, very high very quickly out there. And that, again, being a life-threatening situation for so many residents. The numbers given by the governor just a couple hours ago were very impressive. You're talking about hundreds of people out there that still need to be evacuated, around 1,000 people. The Red Cross, for its part, was talking about 17,000 evacuees so far.
Gallagher, we're seeing live images of Donald Trump being briefed. Now, earlier when his plane, Air Force One, landed in nearby Corpus Christi, it was partly sunny there. Corpus Christi's not very far from Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. But interestingly enough, it was one of the hardest hit cities at the beginning of this meteorological phenomenon. Remember that Harvey started out when it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane, and Corpus Christi is the first big city that was struck when it made landfall. So hit very, very hard. At this point, the hurricane has turned into a tropical storm, moved away from there. So residents pretty much spared out there. And interestingly enough, you had some relatively sunny skies when the president's plane, Air Force One, landed out there. So he's keeping a distance from Houston because, according to the White House, they want to spare local, state and federal officials from having to sort of go into the logistics of having to accompany a presidential visit, which is always, of course, a big deal. But Corpus Christi, a very symbolic location, hard hit, the first hit. And that's where he's being met by local officials such as the Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
All right, we're going to listen in to remarks by Donald Trump at this point.
Trapped in various locations, but we appreciate you both being here. I want to thank my staff, my cabinet. We have quite a few of our cabinet here. You know, Ben Carson, obviously, from HUD, and Tom Price and Linda McMahon, small business, which is now big business, because you're going to be, when you add them all up, you're going to be helping a lot of the people in Texas and doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Linda. But we have had a tremendous group of folks. Our acting director, Elaine, thank you very much for the job you've done. And a man who's really become very famous on television over the last couple of days, Mr. Long. We appreciate it very much. You have been just outstanding. And I can tell you that my folks just telling me how great your representatives have been in working together. It's a real team, and we want to do it better than ever before. We want to be looked at in 5 years and 10 years from now as this is the way to do it. This was of epic proportion. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. And I just want to say that working with the governor and his entire team has been an honor for us. So, Governor, again, thank you very much. And we won't say congratulations. We don't want to do that. You know, we don't want to congratulate. We'll congratulate each other when it's all finished. But you have been terrific, really terrific. It's a great honor. And you've been my friend, too, for a long time. And with that, maybe you could say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the whole community is coming together. You know, right here where the brunt of the Category 4 hurricane winds came in just north of Corpus Christi, we're already starting to affect recovery. Recovery is a slow process, but rest assured that we're doing everything we can to...
Now, there you heard it, live remarks from the U.S. President Donald Trump in nearby Corpus Christi. Correspondent Gallagher Fenwick standing by in Houston. With those people you were mentioning, you saw those people earlier who were taking advantage of a break in the weather to try and get to the supermarket. What do they think about Donald Trump's visit?
Well, listen, Houston is very much a divided city politically. This, after all, is Texas. It's Republican territory. Donald Trump won it quite comfortably. So there are very many Trump voters who are excited to see the presence, or to witness, if you will, the presence of this president, marking a stark contrast, or sharp contrast, with the sort of disastrous response that a previous Republican administration was confronted with during Hurricane Katrina some 10 years ago in 2005. So folks who voted for Trump obviously happy to see that the president insisted on making it out to Texas, put feet on the ground instead of simply flying over the hard-hit areas. But you also have pockets of Houston with progressive votes who did not vote for this president, who are not too thrilled to see him. But nonetheless, this is a moment of unity where those divisions aren't so evident. This really, what I'm witnessing around this city is really volunteers going out, people helping each other regardless of politics, race, or social differences. But again, this photo op that you just witnessed right there of the president with the governor by his side, the head of FEMA and other state, local, federal officials is a very important one. That's the image that this White House really wants to project, an image of unity, working hand in hand with the federal, the local government, unleashing the full force of the federal government and making sure that resolution is brought as quickly and as successfully as possible out here in Houston, because this is, again, let's not forget, the first major test for this administration in dealing with a natural disaster.